Iran's top negotiator mocked the United States as Trump's Hormuz mission failed, turning the setback into another public embarrassment for Washington. Ghalibaf ripped into Trump as Project Freedom flopped in just 36 hours, framing the short-lived mission as a dramatic failure from the start. Trust me bro, was the brutal jibe from an Iranian official that reportedly left Trump red-faced, adding a mocking edge to the escalating war of words. Iran's top negotiator appeared to mock Trump's U-turn on Project Freedom in the Strait of Hormuz, using the sudden reversal to question the seriousness of the U.S. approach. Iran's parliament speaker took to social media to satirize the U.S. military action against Iran, turning the situation into a public swipe at Washington's strategy. Ghalibaf mocked the U.S. military strategy against Tehran as Operation Trust Me Bro, using sarcasm to portray the mission as unserious and ineffective. Operation Trust Me Bro failed. Now back to routine with Operation Fauxios, Ghalibaf said, adding another sharp and mocking line to Iran's response. Mohsen Rezaei, a former IRGC commander and a member of Iran's Expediency Council, taunted the United States in remarks that added another sharp layer to the war of words between the two sides. Rezaei invoked the U.S. failed hostage rescue mission in 1980, according to Al Jazeera on May 5, drawing on one of Washington's most infamous military setbacks to make his point. Rezaei's remarks came after an IRGC spokesperson declared Iran the victor of the war, reinforcing Tehran's public message that it had outlasted and outmaneuvered its adversaries. The former IRGC commander said, quote, "The President of the United States, the Secretary of War, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff share one trait: they sell their delusions as achievements. Iran's powerful armed forces stand ready. What awaits U.S. forces won't be Normandy or Sicily, it will look more like Tabbas. Don't indulge in illusions." Unquote. Rezaei's comments were reportedly a reference to Operation Eagle Claw, the April 1980 U.S. mission that remains one of the most painful failures in American military history. The mission was meant to rescue American hostages in Tehran, but it ended in complete disaster and became a symbol of poor coordination and failed planning. Mechanical failures, followed by a deadly mid-air collision in the Iranian desert, killed 8 U.S. soldiers and forced Washington to abandon the operation in humiliation. Speaking to Al-Mayadeen, Rezaei also said the United States tried to start a coup in Iran but failed, presenting the allegation as another example of Washington's interference in Iranian affairs. The former IRGC chief said, quote, "They attempted a failed military coup in Iran, and we could have also halted all negotiations with the United States. We are trying to remain within the framework of international rules and regulations, while the enemy operates outside of them. We and Saudi Arabia and Turkey must continue advancing together toward an independent regional framework." Unquote. Mocking remarks came as Trump halted his Hormuz naval escort mission just a day after launching it, turning the abrupt pause into yet another point of criticism over his handling of the crisis. Donald Trump has announced the launch of Project Freedom, a U.S.-led initiative aimed at helping dozens of merchant ships stranded in and around the Strait of Hormuz, starting from May 4th. Trump described the operation as a humanitarian gesture intended to assist neutral country vessels and their crews caught in the war zone, many of which are running low on supplies while waiting for safe passage. However, U.S. officials later clarified to outlets such as the Wall Street Journal that Project Freedom would not involve direct naval escorts in the way his initial remarks implied. Instead, the White House outlined the creation of a maritime coordination cell that will identify and share safe routes through the strait, clear of mines and high-risk areas, while coordinating with commercial shipping lines and allied navies. This signals a more limited, advisory role for the U.S. military than the image of warships physically shepherding tankers through the choke point that Trump's announcement initially suggested. The White House now says American warships will temporarily pull back from active escort duty in Hormuz, easing direct confrontation even as tensions in the waterway remain high. Trump insists the pause in Project Freedom is only for a short period, presenting it as a calculated move rather than a climb down under Iranian pressure. The announcement dropped on Trump's social platform just one day after the operation began, prompting fresh questions about why the mission was dialed back so quickly. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Based on a request of Pakistan and other countries, the tremendous military success that we have had during the campaign against the country of Iran, and additionally, the fact that great progress has been made toward a complete and final agreement with representatives of Iran, we have mutually agreed that while the blockade will remain in full force and effect, Project Freedom, the movement of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized and signed." Unquote. Trump frames the step back as proof that negotiations with Iran are making great progress, hinting that a broader agreement could be within reach. He also credits Pakistan and other mediating nations, saying they urged Washington to ease off militarily to give diplomacy room to work. Even with escorts paused, the US blockade on Iran's port stays firmly in place, keeping economic pressure on Tehran while warships step slightly back from the front line. Hours before that, Marco Rubio had announced that the offensive stage of Operation Epic Fury was over, signaling a shift from full-scale strikes to a more defensive posture in the confrontation with Iran.
Operation Epic Fury is concluded. We achieved the objectives of that operation. I'm not going to, we're not cheering for an additional situation to occur. We would prefer the path of peace. What the president would prefer is a deal. He would prefer to sit down, work out a memorandum of understanding for future negotiations that touches on all the key topics that have to be addressed, a full opening of the strait so the world can get back to normal. And he preferred that be negotiated through the route that Steve and Jared have been working and that all of us have been supporting. That's the route he prefers. That is so far not the route that Iran has chosen. And so the result has been that the United States has to do something about the fact that we're the only nation on earth that can do anything to open up a lane within the Straits of Hormuz to get product and to rescue these people that are trapped in there. And that's what we're undergoing now. What that may lead to in the future is speculative. I'm not going to speculate about what it would take or what it would do. But look, the message to Iran, these guys are facing, they are facing real catastrophic destruction to their economy, generational destruction to their economy, generational destruction to the wealth of their country, imposed on themselves by the actions that they're taking. They should check themselves before they wreck themselves in the direction that they're going.
Iran issued a fresh threat after revealing missiles that it said can split into 80 warheads, a claim that has added to fears of further escalation. An advisor to Supreme Leader Mujtaba told US troops that they are being sacrificed by Trump, using unusually sharp language to target American forces directly. Ali Veliati's message was reportedly aimed at soldiers on board the warship USS Tripoli, according to Press TV, making the warning even more explicit. The USS Tripoli is currently in regional waters near Iran to enforce the blockade, according to reports, placing it at the center of the growing confrontation. The advisor to Iran's supreme leader said, quote, "You are extras in a movie show for Trump's next presidential election. Your president has not been able to save US forces in previous wars. Now you are assigned to save the money boxes of our region, but you will end up in an abattoir. History is a good teacher. Tripoli will not be repeated in the Persian Gulf, but rather it will become a nightmare and will demolish your security." Unquote. The warning came just a day after Iranian and US naval forces exchanged fire near the Strait of Hormuz, sharply escalating tensions in the region. Trump had announced Project Freedom as part of an effort to break Iran's blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and restore movement through the vital waterway. The US had launched Project Freedom to guide ships in the Strait of Hormuz amid the Iranian blockade, presenting it as a direct response to the maritime crisis. On the first day of the US mission, Iran allegedly bombed Fujairah in the UAE and multiple cargo ships, deepening fears of a wider confrontation. Subsequently, the US president said he was halting Project Freedom just a day after its launch, creating confusion over the mission's future. Trump linked the decision to what he called great progress toward a complete, final agreement, suggesting diplomacy was moving faster than military pressure.